Hello, Martha Alderson here again, the Plot Whisperer, and we are with our Monday morning plot book group, which we have been working on The Alchemist this month, and we're at our last session with The Alchemist. The next book we're going to do, I think, is going to be The Secret Garden. I haven't committed to it yet, but if you want to get started reading it, it's a great children's book. You know, it's I'd say a middle grade book. But it's got all the markers and it's just a great way. I'm going to talk about foreshadowing and some other sort of concepts. But we're on The Alchemist and we're going to do the climax. I did the climax at the very beginning of this series that we've been doing about the energetic markers. But I wanted to come back to it again because I think it's important for you to think about the climax when you're starting to develop the energetic markers. And now that you've done the end of the beginning, the halfway point, and the crisis, I want to again sort of reiterate what's important about the climax and maybe say it in a different way because it's a different book and it might make more sense to you. Because a lot of people really sort of don't give the emphasis to the climax that the climax deserves. I mean, there's so much that's required of you as a writer, as you know. But the climax really is the ending. And I like to say that beginnings hook the reader, but endings really create fans. Because the reader is left with the end. At the end, and that's what they last remember. And so you want to really have the impact. You want to provide for them what they're expecting at the climax. You can do it in unexpected ways, but on a more energetic level, you have to fulfill some of the parameters that are needed for the climax. So last week we talked about the crisis. After the crisis, there's the downward line on the plot planner. That's the time and that can be either a long time or a shorter period of time depending on your genre. But that's the time when the protagonist decides, what am I going to do now that they have gone through the crisis or the dark night of the soul? And it's time to sort of get their resources together, figure out what they've learned and what they're going to do next. So because our protagonist was so torn, when he finally does make peace with the decision that he is going to follow his dream and leave his loved one behind, he then, when he asks the alchemist, the man who is guiding him, what he should do next, the end of the book begins, which means the last quarter of the book now commences. Because as soon as the protagonist starts to make moves toward the final goal, which for our protagonist is to seize the treasure, then that means that the ending has begun. You're out of the middle, that horrible middle, saggy middle area is over, and now you got a quarter of the book to wrap everything up. And the last quarter of the book is when the protagonist will be even more severely tested. This is the time for the protagonist now to be able to use the skills that they've learned throughout the book, and the protagonist is tested on every single thing that they have learned along the way to get prepared for the climax. So in our book, the climax is when he is very near to his treasure. He finally sees the pyramids. He's going to see the Great Pyramids where he thinks his treasure is buried. And he starts digging, looking for the treasure. And all of a sudden, all of these enemies show up. They beat him up, almost beat him to death. They believe that he has something, he had money, and so they took that from him, and they believe that he has more to give them. And finally, he takes what he learned from the alchemist, from his journey, from all of the things he went through in the book. He uses the skills that he needs in order to get the bad guys to stop and to leave. And before they leave, one of the bad guys tells him the clue that he needs in order to get his treasure. So that moment of climax is when the protagonist is able to do something he was not able to do anywhere else in the story. And then the resolution for this book is when he does in fact find his treasure, because now he knows exactly where it is. So he ends up with the girl and the treasure, and the book is happily ever after, even though he's been tested and gone through all of these ordeals. So if you need more help with this, because the climax is really important, by the time you get to the climax, usually writers are so tired. They're tired of writing, they're tired of being challenged, they're tired of their characters, they just want the book to be over. But really you need to spend as much, if not more, time with your climax than you do at the beginning of the book, because this is what the reader will be left with. So all of chapter 11 in the Plot Whisperer book, The Secrets of Story Structure Any Writer Can Master. All of chapter 11 talks about the climax. There's more in the Blockbuster Plots, which is my other book. And we will see you next Monday when we will start with our new book, which I think will be The Secret Garden, but you'll find out next Monday. So thank you for visiting.